Welcome to the P.A.S. Report Weekly Roundup Podcast. The P.A.S. Report provides an honest analysis on the critical issues that matter to you without the biased media filters. Here's your host, Professor Nicholas Giordano.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the P.A.S. Report Podcast. This is your host, Nick Giordano. I am glad you could join me today. If you're not already a subscriber, make sure that you subscribe and follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. Also, visit the P.A.S. Report website, pasreport.com, and share this episode with others because everyone should be informed at the issues impacting the United States in the global arena. We are living through dangerous times, and a lot of it has to do with the feckless leadership coming out of the White House. This administration has bumbled its way through foreign policy, and remember, he was supposed to be the one with a half century of experience bringing that to the table. He's supposed to be some sort of foreign policy guru, yet the world is much more unstable today than it was a few short years ago. Just consider what has taken place since our debacle of withdrawal from Afghanistan. And it's not to advocate that we should have stayed in Afghanistan, but we could have had a much cleaner withdrawal from there. Our adversaries have become much more emboldened. And it's because they have no fear of this administration. They don't fear the President of the United States. They look at Biden and they mock, they laugh, they see what we see on television, and it truly is concerning. Especially over the weekend, you had 3 American military members killed, coming home now in flag-draped coffins. For the last few months, the Iranian proxy groups have been operating with impunity, not really receiving any response from the United States. That we haven't made it clear. Yes, President Biden has come out and told Iran, stop it with the proxy groups. Don't try and attack us. Don't even think about it. And yet Iran does it anyway. Now, unfortunately, we're in a predicament because what should our response be? As of right now, as of this recording, we don't know what the response is. But what should the response be? Well, I'm here to tell you, in the game of international politics, the response doesn't mean much if our adversaries don't fear and or respect the messenger. And that's the problem the Biden administration has on its hands, that he's not respected around the world, that he's not feared by our adversaries. We were told that the adults were back in charge and the international landscape is more dangerous than it's been in quite some time. At least in my entire lifetime, I've never seen it this dangerous.
Folks, if I were smart, I'd say thank you and leave.
So now we wait and see what the response is going to be, and I'll keep you posted. I mean, this is a fluid situation. It could change at any moment, so I will keep you posted at what's happening. Today, I want to talk about the border battle that is really heating up. This administration, like everything else, they've been derelict in its duty to secure the southern border, and this is a catastrophic disaster. A few weeks ago, I did a few episodes on this. I explained a House Homeland Security Committee report, which concluded that this crisis is costing hardworking Americans nearly $500 billion taxpayer dollars each year. I also explained how this raises the question about the worth of citizenship, considering that under this administration, anywhere from 6 to 9 million illegal immigrants have entered the United States, translating into about 9 to 12 congressional seats in the next census. We are talking about hundreds of billions of dollars to fund their housing, healthcare, education, food, monthly subsidies, and to add insult to injury, our representation is being diluted in the process, this unsustainable process, and states like Texas have had enough. You have Texas Governor Greg Abbott that has been trying to get control of the border in his state, but he's been stymied at every single turn by the Biden administration. You know, as a political scientist and someone who teaches about federalism in the classroom, this is such a fascinating topic because there are so many dimensions and directions that I could take this conversation. Unfortunately, so many Americans are completely unaware of the concept of federalism and how our system actually works. They don't know much about the Constitution, who is responsible for what in our system of governance, and this is one of the reasons that nearly every issue has become federalized over the last few decades. But when it comes to immigration, it is a clear federal responsibility. However, when the federal government is derelict in its responsibility and its duty to protect the American people, to protect the states, well, that doesn't mean that states can't play a role. It doesn't mean that states don't have a say. And Texas Governor Greg Abbott has all but invoked Article 4 of the Constitution by declaring the border crisis an invasion. So in this argument, who is right constitutionally? Is it the Biden administration? Is it Governor Abbott? Do they both have merits to their arguments? Again, there are several dimensions to this that I want to explore in this episode, and I want to talk about the border battle that's heating up between Texas and the feds. You now have 25 other states that have pledged their support for Texas. This dispute is now taking place against the backdrop of potential impeachment proceedings against Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas. The House Republicans have unveiled articles of impeachment against Mayorkas, and so how is this going to impact the border dispute? Now, I already spoke about the Mayorkas impeachment. Clearly, you don't impeach government officials because they're incompetent. That's not an impeachable offense. However, Mayorkas, it's not that he's incompetent. The fact is that Mayorkas has lied to Congress on several occasions. I mean, this idiot still says that the border is secure, that it's the most secure border in the history of the United States. So lying to Congress can be impeachable. However, I also said that it's not going to go anywhere. Even if they do decide to impeach Mayorkas in the House, which I don't even think that's going to succeed, given that Republicans have such a slim majority, I don't foresee a situation where 2/3 of the Senate vote to actually remove Mayorkas. Then we have a supposed compromise potentially in the Senate between Republicans and Democrats in regards to the border and border security, but the House has announced that the compromise agreement is dead on arrival. So the media is apoplectic. They're blaming the former president of the United States, President Trump, for torpedoing the agreement, sabotaging it. However, what was in the agreement? And would this agreement actually secure the border, or is the agreement another slap in the face to every single American and legal permanent resident of the United States? As the crisis deepens, I will explain it all, and I will explain the profound impact this issue has on the political landscape, our nation's security, and the future of the United States. So everyone hang tight. I'll get to it all when we get back from this quick break. Welcome back, everyone, and let's jump right into it. For a couple of years, the border states, they've been critical of this administration, and rightly so. They've been critical of the border policies, and rightly so, because we don't have a border. We don't have a border, and it threatens our sovereignty as a nation state. So Texas has decided to get proactive, and for the last year, they've been placing buoys in the Rio Grande, putting razor wire at some crossings. They're putting up barriers, and it's all designed to limit the amount of people crossing over the border into the territory of Texas. A lot of these towns cannot handle the traffic. They can't handle the number of people that are coming through. Take a place like Eagle Pass, Texas. This is a town of nearly 30,000 residents, and they've had to deal with around 5,000 illegal immigrants per day. I mean, that's not sustainable. A community of 30,000 people cannot handle 5,000 people crossing through their territory each and every day. And unfortunately, you have so many simpletons out there. They only look at the superficial BS arguments rather than actually digging deeper to understand the magnitude of the crisis we face. And what I mean is, take a look at the infrastructure of Eagle Pass, and then you start to understand why they cannot handle the surge that they've been seeing. Their roadways, the grocery stores, the grid systems, the water supply facilities, and the other infrastructure. It's getting overwhelmed. So Governor Abbott decided to do something about it. And because of the barriers that he put in place, the number has dropped down from 5,000 to 400 to 500 illegal immigrants a day. Still a lot, still overwhelming, but it is much more manageable. However, this administration seeks to undermine Abbott and everything he does. And it goes to show you how deeply invested this administration is with leftist policy and leftist ideology. So we've seen the battle ensue in the courts. The Biden administration continues to order Border Patrol and troops to remove the barriers. And now it's in the court system. District Court ruled in favor of Texas, with the judge stating that these barriers are the property of Texas and federal authorities cannot remove or destroy said property. This followed a ruling in another case where a judge ruled that Border Patrol can cut the razor wire because the state hadn't met the requirements to issue a wider preliminary injunction. But the judge did note that, quote, the law may be on the side of the defendants and compel a resolution in their favor today, but it does not excuse their culpable and duplicitous conduct. The evidence presented amply demonstrates the other failure of the defendants to deter, prevent, and halt unlawful entry into the United States. All these cases now appealed to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. The Fifth Circuit temporarily halted the lower court's order that the feds can cut the razor wire. The Biden administration put in an emergency appeal to the Supreme Court to reverse the temporary halt. It gets a little confusing. And last week, the Supreme Court vacated the Fifth Circuit's temporary halt. The High Court stated in a 5-4 decision that the feds can continue to remove the barriers while the case is being litigated at the Fifth Circuit. So some are mischaracterizing the 5-4 decision, saying that the ruling was affirming that Texas was in violation of the Constitution and usurped federal authority. However, that's not what the 5-4 decision stated. They ruled in favor of reversing the temporary halt while the case is being heard in the Fifth Circuit. Essentially, the Fifth Circuit can rule in favor of Texas or the Biden administration, and the case is going to end up back at the Supreme Court. In any event, the Supreme Court's decision does effectively neuter Texas's ability to inhibit people from crossing the border. But Texas has vowed that they will continue to prevent the feds from removing these barriers as long as the federal government isn't serious about securing the border. So you have people on the left that are now screaming, and the neocons and the never-Trumpers, they're screaming, oh my God, Texas is ignoring the Supreme Court decision, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, and Biden ignored the Supreme Court decision time and time again, right? With his eviction moratorium, with the CDC during coronavirus, with the student loan bailout that the Supreme Court ruled thoroughly unconstitutional. Biden doesn't have the authority to do it, but he's doing it anyway. In any event, I'm not going to get into the Supreme Court aspect of it. The Supreme Court is maintaining a long-running precedent that the federal government, not individual states, have the authority to enforce border security. And when it comes to the Constitution, we have to ask who is right and who is wrong. The truth is, it's not a simple answer. Okay? Constitutionally, the Supreme Court's argument is solid. Article 1, Section 8 gives Congress the power to make immigration law, and Article 2 gives the President the authority of immigration and border enforcement. Now, with that being said, I can also defend Texas and say that they are acting within their constitutional boundaries. Do you really think that the Founding Fathers would make states bow to the mercy of the federal government? If you understand the Constitution, you should understand our system of federalism, where you have two levels of government, neither of which are created by the other, and both of which operate independently of each other. And you could easily argue that President Biden is violating his constitutional oath to faithfully execute the laws enacted by Congress and to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, as well as defending the states. Since President Biden has failed in that obligation, since he has failed to defend and protect Texas, Texas is within its constitutional authority to defend itself under Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution. Understand that the states are under no obligation to be a passive victim of federal failures because the feds refuse to do their constitutional duties. Article 1, Section 10 expressly guarantees that states have the sovereign power to repel an invasion and defend their citizenry from overwhelming and imminent danger. I can also make the argument that this falls under Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, where the federal government is obligated to defend the states and, quote, shall protect each of them against invasion. Now, Governor Abbott first began toying with the idea of Article 4 invasion clause in November of 2022, and in September of 2023, he announced he was officially invoking the Article 4 invasion clause. The White House spokesperson, Karine Jean-Pierre, claims that this is much ado about nothing, and that Governor Abbott just wants to make it harder for Border Patrol to do their jobs. Take a listen to what she had to say.
Just back to the border, does the administration think Texas is failing to comply with court orders around the placement and removal of razor wire?
Well, I mean, the Supreme Court is the highest, law, court of the land. It is, and they made a ruling, and on Tuesday, as you guys probably saw, DHS sent Texas a letter outlining the access Border Patrol needs in Shelby Park, for example, to do their jobs, and demanding Texas confirm this access will be honored. Border Patrol needs to have access in order to do their job. They just do. And, what we're seeing from Governor Abbott, you've heard me say this over and over again, they're making it harder. He's making it harder for Border Patrol to do their jobs. They need access. And right now, they don't have that. And it's under the Constitution of the United States that federal law is the supreme law of the land, and any conflicting state is preempted.
Should the American people be prepared for the situation on the border to get worse if that money is not approved?
So look, I'm not going to get into, read the future and how things are going to turn out. What I can speak to is what we're trying to do right now to deal with the challenges, to deal with the broken system, the immigration system. That's what I can speak to.
Someone should tell her that the Border Patrol hasn't been able to effectively do their jobs in 3 years. I mean, this administration has turned our Border Patrol agents into nothing more than processing agents and daycare workers. They can't enforce the border because they're overwhelmed with the numbers coming over, and they're simply processing them. So maybe we should check in with our illustrious border czar, because surely she can offer some great insights into how to fix the southern border. I mean, she's been hard at work at this for the last 2.5 years. since she's been declared border czar. And here's what she had to say.
68% of Americans disapprove of the way the Biden administration has handled the border. So how do you address that? Have you done enough?
There's no question. Our immigration system is broken, and it needs to be fixed. And as with any problem, then leaders will participate, true leaders, in the solution. So I'm going to take you back to about 3 years ago, and it was, I think, the day after our inauguration, when we came in, Joe Biden as president and me as vice president. The first bill that we offered was a bill to fix the immigration system.
And that's when you controlled both houses.
And Congress did not take it up.
If there's one thing you could always count on with the vice president, it's certainly a useless word salad where she says absolutely nothing and just rambles on and on. However, some are talking about a border agreement, that we now have Senate Democrats and Senate Republicans working on a border agreement, a compromise. Because apparently President Biden can't fix this on his own, even though he, on day one of his administration, threw out every single one of Trump's executive orders pertaining to the border and border security. I'll get into that in a few. But what does this agreement actually entail, and why are House Republicans and Trump being accused of trying to blow this agreement up, sabotage this agreement? And I want to talk about that when we get back from this quick break, because I think it's so important. So everyone hang tight. I'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. So there's a lot of talk about the potential deal between Senate Democrats and Republicans that would be meant to secure the border. There's also a lot of talk about how former President Trump and House Republicans are trying to scuttle this deal, and they're only doing it for political purposes because they want to make it an issue in the 2024 campaign. I hate to break to them, it's already an issue. But Speaker Johnson has declared the bill dead on arrival. Of course, the Democrats in the media industrial complex, also known as the Democrat National Committee mouthpieces, they're apoplectic. They're screaming how Republicans don't really want to secure the border, that it's all a show, and they want to use it as a political issue in 2024. Even the president made a statement about this. Take a listen.
It also give me, as president, the emergency authority to shut down the border until it could get back under control. If that bill were the law today, I'd shut down the border right now and fix it quickly.
So is this true? Are Republicans really trying to scuttle a deal that would secure the border? First of all, let's take the former president out of the equation, because whenever Trump's name is invoked, the people begin to foam at the mouth. President Trump serves as a lightning rod. He'll continue to be a lightning rod. And the entire debate becomes emotionally charged, and it's all logical. However, so many of these people, they suffer from TDS. TDS is a real disorder. Now, here is the more important question. Why do we need another law? This has become a major problem within our society, not just under this administration, but we've been conditioned to believe that the only way to tackle our issues is to pass a new law. But no one ever explains why previous laws are inadequate, why the previous laws aren't working. No one ever says that if we need to pass a new law, that we should repeal some of the dozens of previous laws regarding whatever issue it is we're dealing with. This isn't just a problem with the immigration issue. We see this on every single issue. I remember about a year and a half ago when Democrats and Republicans wanted to pass a law granting new powers to the federal government to tackle domestic terrorism, white supremacy, because that's the greatest danger we face as the world is on the cusp of a nuclear war. At the time, I pointed out that we have over 50 statutes, laws passed by Congress that are aimed to tackle terrorism, both domestic and international terrorism. And I raised the question then, why are the over 50 other laws insufficient? If they aren't working, well, why aren't they working? And if they aren't working, shouldn't they be repealed? Now, thankfully, the domestic terror law that the Democrats wanted to jam through the system with Republican help, it didn't pass, which is a good thing. Okay, again, it's not this idea that we need laws. How about we just enforce the laws that are already on the books? Most people are ignorant about the American political system and government in general. So many have come to believe that laws, the passing of laws, equates to the solution. But if that was the case, why have we been debating the same issues for the last several decades, despite dozens upon dozens upon dozens of laws being passed in regards to these same issues? And yet we're still debating them. So there is no solution. Biden doesn't need any new laws. In the clip I played a bit ago, President Biden said that if Congress passes the law he wants, he could shut down the border right now. That's what he said. Take a listen again.
It also give me, as president, the emergency authority to shut down the border until it could get back under control. If that bill were the law today, I'd shut down the border right now and fix it quickly.
He claims he doesn't have the authority to shut down the border as of right now. He doesn't have the authority to end the border crisis that he created. And that's rich, considering he signed 94 executive actions in his first 100 days that all but gutted our border security measures. So he could literally reinstitute those border security measures, and that would dramatically improve the situation. I mean, understand, this is the guy that signed an executive order undoing the Stay in Mexico policy, probably the most destructive executive order of his administration. The Stay in Mexico policy prevented asylum seekers from crossing the border. They had to wait in Mexico until their asylum hearings. And this did two things. First, it prevented people from gaining access to the interior of the United States. Once people gain access to the interior of the United States, they never show up to their court dates. Very few do. I think it's something like 80 or 85% will not show up. That's what makes them illegal. And if they were caught violating the Stay in Mexico policy, the asylum claims would be immediately dismissed. They wouldn't have access to the United States. Second, this policy made people think twice before migrating to the United States. Would you really go on this long and dangerous journey only to have to remain in Mexico and then potentially be denied at your asylum hearing? See, for too many people, that wasn't worth the chance. And so once Trump did the Stay in Mexico policy, we saw the number of people trying to get through the United States and cross the border drop to historic lows. The third thing this policy did was that it forced Mexico to get tougher on their southern border. Mexican officials, they knew that if they allowed people to flood their southern border, it's going to create a bottleneck at the northern border, and the Mexican government's going to be responsible for those people. They also understood that if the United States does deny all these asylum claims, those people are going to stay in Mexico. But see, Mexico, they don't want an immigration problem. They don't mind if we have one, but they don't want to be overwhelmed themselves. And they certainly don't want to use Mexican pesos to take care of those immigrants. And if you look at Mexican immigration laws, they are one of the strictest country when it comes to immigration. So the truth is that President Biden could solve the border crisis immediately if he wanted to. All he has to do is enforce the current laws. He could end this crisis tomorrow. Now, let's look at what we know about this potential Senate Democrat and Republican compromise. What does it really do? Does it really resolve the open border? And here's what they're not telling you. First of all, we have no idea what this potential compromise would do because those involved have not released the text of the bill. They haven't released the legislative language. Now, why is that? I mean, if this was so good, if this deal was so great, wouldn't you want to release it to the American public, to the press, to tell the American public so that more people would support it? Why won't they let us see what's in the bill? This is nothing more than a BS bait and switch. Remember when Pelosi said you have to pass the bill to find out what's in it? Well, how well did that work out for us? Unfortunately, you had so many morons that actually fell for it, hook, line, and sinker, and that's why they're trying to do it again. If this bill really solved the border crisis, they shouldn't be afraid to hold it up to the public for scrutiny. But Republican Senator James Lankford, one of the architects behind this agreement, argued on Fox News Sunday that the actual language of the legislation needs to be kept secret, that it's important it be kept secret. Why? And this is the problem with Republicans. They're just as bad. It's the uni-party system. And what else do we know? Well, we know that whatever the negotiations are that are taking place right now, it doesn't require the completion of the border wall. We know that. We also know that the bill doesn't tackle the 6 to 9 million people who illegally came here under the Biden administration. So essentially, that's a new issue that's not going to get resolved under this bill. It allows them to stay here in the United States, reap the benefits of the United States, and they will never go home, that's for sure. Senator Lankford argued that the bill increases the number of Border Patrol agents to help secure our border. But again, it's a lie. The new hires are going to be nothing more than additional processing agents. Understand, because Customs and Border Patrol are stretched so thin, agents from other federal agencies like ICE, the Air Marshals, and others, they've been assigned to assist Border Patrol in the processing of migrants. So if we hire new Border Patrol, well, guess what? Those Border Patrol are going to fill the role that the ICE agents and the Air Marshals have been doing down there. So Border Patrol is still not going to be able to actually enforce border laws, because that's not the intent. And even so, even if you increase Border Patrol, that doesn't stop the flow into the United States. The point is you need to prevent people from coming up here in the first place. Now, why do I say that? Well, it's clear. We know from what's being discussed out there that this potential compromise wouldn't go into effect until there are 5,000 encounters that happen on the border in a day. Then the border faces a mandatory shutdown. Well, if it's really to shut down our border that simply, that, oh, we got 5,000 encounters, let's shut everything down now, why hasn't that been done already? And why is the number 5,000? So we have to wait till 5,000 people come in a day, and then we could declare it a border crisis, and then the president could shut it down? And then what happens when there's a new administration? Does a new administration have to wait until they get 5,000 border encounters each and every day before they can shut it down? Think back to President Obama's Homeland Security Secretary, Jay Johnson, who stated that 1,000 border encounters a day overwhelms the system, that the system can't handle it. Now we're going to say that 5,000 border encounters is acceptable, that we can manage that? This is the idiocy that we're dealing with. They must really think people are just that stupid. It's actually insulting. And then you have these compromise senators, the Democrats and Republicans, stating, well, we're going to invest tens of billions to $100 billion to enhance border security measures. Wait a minute. I remember under the Trump administration when they were bitching and complaining that the border wall was going to cost $25 billion. Now we're talking about investing an additional $100 billion to prop up border security? What is going on? And open your eyes, because it's extremely insulting to each and every American. They have no regard for the people that they swore to serve. This is a crisis. It's not fair to the people of the United States. It's not fair to the legal permanent residents. It's not fair to the immigrants that are trying to do it the right way. And it's not even fair to the illegal immigrants that are taking this dangerous journey to try and get to this country. So let's be honest. If this administration really wanted to solve the problem, they could do it overnight. They could do it immediately. They don't need any additional laws to do it. The only thing you're doing by passing another law is you're empowering the federal government even more to do a job that they're not really going to do, and somehow we'll find a way to use the powers against Americans because it seems like they could always do that. That's the only thing you're doing. We need serious people in office. We need people that are going to do what's in the best interest of the United States first. I'm not saying that we can't take in people that have legitimate asylum claims. I'm not saying that we can't reform our legal immigration system to make it more efficient and to make the process quicker. What I am saying is that when you have millions of people streaming across the border each and every year, and those people are having access to all the taxpayer benefits, well, that's a system that certainly is broken. And it is both the Democrat Party and the Republican Party, but more so on the Democrats, that don't really want to solve this problem. They will constantly bring up the idea of comprehensive immigration reform. Well, you can't deal with all the people here until you stop the flow of those coming into the United States. As I stated last week, this is a major 2024 campaign issue. Whether a compromise agreement is made or not, it doesn't matter. It's still going to be one of the most important issues of 2024, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Now, if you found this episode informative, please leave a 5-star review. Take 30 seconds to also write a review on any podcast platform that allows it. Also, share this episode with your family and friends and on social media. I want to thank everyone for joining me. I want you to stay safe, and hopefully World War III doesn't start, and I'll be back next week with another great episode of the P.A.S. Report podcast.
Thank you for listening to the P.A.S. Report Weekly Roundup Podcast.
Have a good one. Bye.
Be sure to rate, share, and subscribe to the podcast so you'll never miss an episode. Also, visit PASreport.com and follow us on Twitter at PAS Report.